everybody, and welcome to this brand new spoiler review for episode 8 from House of the Dragon from the
Geek
Buddies. Hey! My side is strong as everybody else's. Welcome, everybody. We're going to have some fun breaking down what I think is the longest episode of the season so far, and a lot happened with almost to no action, almost a little bit to no action throughout this episode, yet so much was going on here when you talk about the political machinations, the maneuvering of the pieces on the chessboard, some foreshadowing going on as well. And as I've been kind of schooled a little bit, I will leave out any details, any spoiler details about what's to come in the story. I'll just focus on what's going on here and maybe throw in some comparisons to how the book did the story versus how the story played out here in the episode. That's the limit to which I will do that, because some of you commented down below that you don't like me reading ahead, so to speak, and ruining that for you all. So I want to respect that, and I apologize to anybody going forward. But we are going to spoil the hell out of this episode. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Outlaw Nation and the Geek Buddies. Mike?
I am Michael Vogel. I'm a writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
Shan?
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm a television actor and an animation writer, where you can see some of our latest work on Netflix right now with Strawberry Shortcake, Berry in the Big City, Season 2.
Do they all keep their berry heads on in the Berry show? Is there any?
For the most part.
Thus far. Physically, yes.
Physically, okay.
Metaphorically, you gotta watch to find out.
Who can say for sure? All right, and before we go forward, just want to give some love, of course, to Carbon Health, who continues to power and sponsor us here on the Geek Buddies in the Outlaw Nation. If you've got any healthcare questions, concerns, or needs, if someone takes half your head off, maybe you want to roll on over to carbonhealth.com, get that checked out. They've got in-person care, virtual care, and urgent care available everywhere. COVID testing as well. 100-plus locations all over the country. 80-plus locations in California alone. Carbonhealth.com. Also download the app for any questions when you are on the go. All right, so much to jump into episode 8 here, gentlemen. I mean, there's so much to cover with Lord of the Tides. Obviously, this is a episode that was very focused on who is going to take control of Driftmark and essentially be in control of CORLYS VALEREON's kingdom. A lot went on here in terms of the battles here, the bastard stuff coming back up again, the verbal battles going on, changes at King's Landing. The children are older now. It's a 6-year time jump, and clearly, but the old wounds have not healed, and they pop up yet again. We've got some other pieces of the puzzle that come back into this show as well that we haven't seen for a couple episodes. What role are they going to play? And of course, King Viserys, who, my lord, he's like a dog aging 7 years per year, is just struggling like crazy through this entire episode. Yet I believe has one of the greatest scenes ever, akin to climbing a mountain, climbing to the Iron Throne. Michael, overall, episode 8, what did you think of this episode here in House of the Dragon?
I think two things. One, I thought it was an amazing episode. Everything you said. I mean, it was just gripping. Every single scene. I mean, as you got into that, the scene in the throne room, the dinner scene, each one of these things was just gripping based on the writing, based on the performances, based on, we were talking last week about the funeral and all sort of the glances here and there and everywhere else. And this was like that times 1,000. The only thing I will say, and I don't think it's not a critique, but it's just an observation, is I think I'm slowly catching up to you two on the whole, maybe we don't need all these time jumps. Maybe we could have taken a little bit more time. I think if you include the prologue at the very beginning of the first episode, I think that we've jumped 30 years at this point, as far as what we've seen. And I still like that we're just jumping into the big meat of things, so that we didn't deal with the 6 years between the funeral and now. Yeah. But there's probably a couple things that would have been interesting to see along that journey. So, this is the choice they've made, and I'm not mad at the choice. Everything that's happening is gripping, but I think, much like you guys are saying, these characters are so rich and it's also interesting that I wouldn't necessarily have minded a few more episodes kind of filling in the gaps here.
Yeah, and I'd love to know, maybe somebody in an interview down the road when they're out underneath an NDA can actually say, like, well, HBO was worried that people wouldn't go along with it, so we thought we'd have to tell the whole story in one season. just in case. There's still a lot more to tell, obviously.
Yeah,
but
they're not telling the whole story in one season.
I'm not going to say anything. Shannon McClung, thoughts overall on episode 8, please.
I mean, across the board, I, just super enjoyed it. Like, normally I watch House of the Dragon on Monday mornings with my breakfast. But last night, my wife went to bed a little early, so I was kind of like, maybe I'll watch it tonight. I'll be ready to go to bed by the end of it. That was not the case. I was all amped up after watching that episode. As much as I did love it, I love the casting. Like, I'm really curious why, and perhaps this is in the books, and our audience can tell us. But why, Aegon is kind of turned out to be a little bit of a shrimp, and AEMOND is now this just tall, like, badass warrior, and he's got the awesome eye patch. I mean, wow. I love the casting, especially of those two. I mean, they're just such bastards. I mean, not literal
ironically,
yeah. But I mean, again, looking at Sir Harold, knowing how much time has passed, I'm like, why did you put a little gray? Same thing with Otto Hightower. I'm like, that guy looks exactly the same. Like, wrong. I was literally looking at myself in the mirror and pulling up old photos. I'm like, how much different do I look from 20 years ago? I'm like, a little bit. But yeah, as Vogel said, it was just gripping drama. And Viserys, for someone like after episode 1 and you kind of saw the trailer of what was to come, I'm like, yeah, this guy's not making it out of episode 3. I mean, just to see him stumbling along. So it's like, finally put this guy out of his misery. But across the board, performances, all fantastic. I think there are probably some interesting stories that we've probably skipped over. But everything that they are giving us is great.
Yeah, I have to agree. I didn't know what to expect from this episode because last episode really enjoyed that one. But this one, the thing is, about the great thing about Game of Thrones is it doesn't always have to be action. A lot of the action is occurring, as you guys have said, sometimes non-verbally, sometimes in the glances, sometimes in the little asides, sometimes in the moments and the quick back and forths, or these extended scenes that happen when they're exchanging their points of views on things. So much is happening within those scenes that you are on the edge of your seat because you don't know in King's Landing how one word can land you at the end of a sword. One outburst in a throne room can get your head lopped off. So you just never know. Everyone is always 1 second away from dying. And I felt that so powerfully throughout this whole episode. And that's one of the gifts when a Game of Thrones episode is written so well, and I say House of the Dragon, of course, Game of Thrones universe show is written so well, you are so invested in these characters and what is going to happen throughout, because they're never short on opinions, which is why death is always around the corner for sure for some of them. But let's get into it. We're going to break it all down here and take it section by section. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this ride. As I said, it's been 6 years since the last episode. Maester Kelvin informs Rhaenys that her husband, CORLYS, may have been consumed by blood fever after fighting in a recent battle. VAEMOND is trying to prepare them for the worst, but Rhaenys is rejecting it. She said, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if he's alive or not. We don't know what's going to happen. But VAEMOND worries about who will take the Driftmark throne. Luecerys Valerion is next in line for the throne, but VAEMOND wants it because he actually has Valerian blood, where he thinks the children do not, obviously, and that has been going on for the last few episodes. He says he would love Rhaenys' support, but he does not need it. So already creating a battle line here between him and Rhaenys. Of course, it was all VAEMOND delivering that eulogy in the last episode. Rhaenys counters and says, the king could have your tongue, but he counters that the king is no longer on the throne. It's a queen who sits on the throne these days, and she clearly has grown stronger. That is Alicent over Viserys. And we see Daemon unearthing an egg from Syrax, and he ends up taking 3 eggs. Lady Baela is on Driftmark and has sent a message to Daemon informing him of VAEMOND's desires to petition to be the king of, or to be in charge at Driftmark. Rhaenyra is coming down. She looks pregnant, so I don't know how many kids they've had. Her and Daemon. Jace is getting quizzed on the histories and learning High Valyrian, and he's having a tough time getting his mouth around the High Valyrian. Daemon comes in. Jacaerys takes Joffrey from the room. He gives her Daemon gives Rhaenyra Baela's message about Vaemond. Rhaenyra wants to go to King's Landing to fight these accusations before the king and claim Driftmark for her son. So, Mike, hell of a beginning right off the bat. Corlys is out of the equation for now. Rhaenys is trying to adhere to his wishes, even though she fought him on those wishes in the last episode. Vaemond here now is suing for basically control of Driftmark because he cherishes his blood and thinks it would be an insult to have a bastard on the throne there, an insult to him, and also an insult to his brother, even though he calls out his brother for being too addicted to being in the history books and not enough with dealing with the now. What do you think about this whole opening and setting up this foundation for this episode?
I just really love that they've done such a good job with the show. Like, as you guys were saying, Aegon and Aemond are, or at least one of the Aegons. There's a lot of Aegons flying around, which is part of the fucking problem with Westeros. But Alicent's children, Aegon and Aemond, are just dicks. And Rhaenyra's kids and Laenor's not kids are not dicks.
Yeah.
So as everyone is running around complaining about all this stuff, like, they're never wrong. Vaemond's not wrong. He's got a good point. Those are not Laenor's children. They do not have the blood that should be sitting on the Driftmark throne. So he's right, but he's also kind of a dick. And we kind of like the bastard kids. So we're like, let him have the throne. Like, it's just a really funny thing that they've done in creating the show where we're kind of like cooler with the bastard kids because they're cooler kids. Yeah. So I just think it's really, really interesting. Again, like, kind of jumping to just getting to 6 years ahead and being like, Corlys is sick. He's on his way back. He might be dead. We don't know. You're like, oh, okay. It was kind of a little bit of whiplash.
Deal with that.
Also getting to Dragonstone and seeing a bunch of blonde-headed kids around, which sort of just begs the question, and again, I've not read the book, so I don't know whatever, but you're like, well, I mean, now you've got some legitimate Targaryens running around, and you've got your bastard kids, so really, this is all just a crapshoot at this point. I don't know what's going on. Always get excited to see new dragon eggs. I mean, just the fact that we have all of these dragons flying around and that... at some point in the not too distant future, we don't have a lot of dragons flying around, is just building us up for a whole lot of dragon heartache at some point down the road. I also love that, is it Baela who was back?
Yes.
Yeah. Who, like, I love just like the letter to dad. I love that she's just standing there and then she's like, yo, dad, some shit's going down. I just wanted to let you know. It's very hard to keep track of. Here's the hard part about when Targaryens are in the mix is it's really hard to tell as you're trying to keep track of everything. Like, now, was that his daughter or his uncle or his sister or his second niece? Like, all of who is whose uncle, aunt, daughter, sister, brother is very confusing with this family. I mean, I got it, but you have to sit there for a minute and be like, and that is who to who again? I'm not quite sure. But again, just like with the funeral last week, once you just accept the fact that they're doing these time jumps, that each episode is like, and in a very special event in Westeros, here's what's happening this week. So last week it was like the funeral that brought everybody together so that you had this big family situation. And now it's this questioning of who should sit on the Driftmark throne, which ultimately, if Vaemond is allowed to sit on the Driftmark throne, basically says to all of Westeros, Rhaenyra's kids are not Laenor's kids, and they're shitty. So, like, it's not just a Driftmark issue, even though Vaemond is like, this is just about the Driftmark, but it's not really. So it's a huge issue, gets everybody to King's Landing, and just moves all the pieces on the board back together again so that we can watch them all bumper car off of each other for 50 minutes, which is a great way to kick things off in this episode.
That's a good point. Yeah, nothing's in a vacuum in this kingdom at all. Everything connects to everything else, because if you remove Rhaenyra's claim to Driftmark, then you weaken her claim to the overall Iron Throne. And that may be something that comes up later on in the show. We shall see. Shannon, overall thoughts on this opening to kind of lay the groundwork for what we're going to get in this episode?
Well, one, I love the production design. Like, I know we've seen the Driftmark throne before, but this is the first time I've really kind of paid attention to it, maybe because of the way the shots started from above and kind of went up, directly above the throne.
Right.
But knowing that the Iron Throne is made of the swords of, vanquished enemies, like looking at this, sort of piecemeal made out of wood, from a design standpoint, I'm like, that's just super, super cool. And I imagine that is probably from the books. But is it, is this wood from ships that the fleet have decimated?
Yeah.
So I love the design of it. The whole thing with Rhaenys and VAEMOND is Rhaenys made this case to CORLYS in the last episode, saying that this needs to go past Laenor's sons. It needs to go to Baela because this is her, she is your blood. And it's so interesting because Rhaenys as a character is someone who has made her peace with not being the queen. Now we get to see her VAEMOND is basically, saying those aren't CORLYS's grandkids. It needs to be one of us. Well, it's she agreed. She didn't agree it should be VAEMOND. But she actually agreed, but you can see her doing her duty later in the episode. This is what my husband wanted. This is what he thinks. And then getting back to Dragonstone, what I thought was really interesting with Luecerys is this want to honor his forebears, to speak that ancient Valyrian. Whereas whenever we see Aegon and Aemond, especially Aegon, it's sort of like whatever. So even though, as Vogel said, they're not the legitimate claim to the throne, but they sure would be better suited. So I thought everything that was set up was great.
It's almost surprising that go ahead, Mike.
No, I mean, those kids know what they are. I mean, they've asked multiple times. Those kids are not in the dark. Him wanting to learn High Valyrian and kind of really working super, super hard to do it. They know the truth.
Yeah.
Everybody. That's the thing about this show that's crazy. Is even Viserys knows the truth. He doesn't want to admit it, but everybody knows. There is nobody in the dark here about the truth of it, but they are going to hold, but it is not to be said, which is just a fascinating level of tension because no one's keeping the secret from anybody. Everybody knows. It is just, you were ordered by the king that this is the rule. The king said so this is what it is, which is fascinating.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Eve Best is doing just incredible work here as Rhaenys, and she's really come on in the last few episodes as they've given her more to do, and it's been fun to watch. And VAEMOND, his strength and power, his nobility, all of this coming through here in this moment. But you sense, just because those of us who've been seasoned in watching Game of Thrones episodes, we know the moral, high ground, doing what's right people rarely win in the world of Game of Thrones. And so it was almost kind of a setup here to get you to connect with VAEMOND, even though VAEMOND feels like he's pushing a little bit past where he needs to be, or taking a little bit too much of a aggressive approach to the situation. He's not wrong, but maybe a different tact would have gotten him where he wanted.
Yeah, he's not wrong, but he is a dick.
Well, I wouldn't say he was a dick. Why would you say he's a dick? He's worried that his kingdom is going to go to the wrong people. He wants to keep the line going. His brother might be dead, so he's making the moves that he needs to make to possibly keep the kingdom going.
He threatens Rhaenys. He doesn't just say, I
don't need your help.
I don't need your help means I'm already assembling my faction to take over by force if necessary. So that is a threat. And although we're jumping ahead, dude relishes calling those kids bastards and Rhaenyra a whore. He's a dick. He's not wrong, but he's a dick.
I'll go along with you in the second part, but not the first part. But go ahead.
VAEMOND reminds me a lot of Stannis Baratheon. This is the ruler that people don't want. But it's no, this is what is right. He's very black and white with everything. And and ultimately, like, he probably would be the wrong guy. But according to the rules, like, he's very much a rule follower. This is what is supposed to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think the key difference, it is interesting. I mean, like, and look, I don't really care that much about Vaemond one way or the other, but the using Stannis as a barometer, Stannis would never have threatened to take over by force, because he would have, when he thought he was going to take over the kingdom after Robert died, he was the oldest. Like, he no, I guess Vaemond is legitimately, okay, now I'll give it to you. You're right. I changed my mind. He's very much like Stannis. They're both dicks. Good point.
He set his daughter on fire, dude. I mean, he's a dick. Stannis is pretty much a dick.
I was gonna try and like have some argument that Stannis was an honorable, and then I was like, no, I was thinking back to that season, and I'm like, no. Yeah, you're right. No, okay, good point. I'll give it to you.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on here to the next section here. So we arrive at King's Landing.
Do you want to take a break before we do?
Yeah, well, I guess we can take a break here. Good call. All right, we'll take a break here, and we'll jump into the next section of the show right after this. That's good. It's really good. All right, let's move on here. We are at we get to King's Landing here. Rhaenyra arrives with Daemon. No one is there to greet her except one of the people, one of the lords there, one of the sirs there, but not Alicent, not Otto, not even her dad. No one is there, in essence, of higher status to greet her. We go to the council, and the main reason nobody's going to greet us is because Alicent is holding council there. She is the one running the council and hearing from everybody around the table. Lord Beesbury tells us that the Stepstones battle has been settled. And then the idea of the Driftmark, who should be placed at Driftmark, becomes an issue that kind of divides the council. Little shots are taken about the lineage of Rhaenyra's children. And it is mentioned that Corlys has not officially said that Luecerys is the heir to Driftmark, even though he essentially said that to Luecerys at the funeral. Apparently, he hasn't officially said it like Viserys said it about Rhaenyra. So interesting stuff there. And Alicent, there's a battle within council. You're right. Alicent gets up to greet them eventually, and we'll hear everyone's petition about this whole thing. Then Sir Eric, the other Eric, tells her of a delicate situation in her son's apartments. So very interesting allusion there. We're going to get to that in just a second. But Rhaenyra and Daemon are walking in, and they see all the changes. And Rhaenyra comments how it doesn't feel like home, even though I'm coming home. And there's going to be a comment on that a little bit later. She goes in to see her father, and we see the massive model that he has apparently been building over these 6 years. Good God, biggest train set I've ever seen. And Viserys looks so bad now. He's got his eye covered. Half his face is covered. I said he looks like Gary Oldman as old Dracula, really gone bad. And Daemon Viserys and Rhaenyra have a great conversation coming together. But Daemon tries to lobby him for their side, for Luecerys. She introduces him to Aegon and Viserys, her grandchildren. Daemon hands Viserys his tea, and then he smells it. So thinking of what might be going on here, we cut to Alicent. The queen that you both thinks is so innocent. We cut to Alicent as a young woman named Diana crying in front of her. We find out that Aegon, her son, has raped her. She tells her it isn't her fault. It tries to console her, but then she silences her by claiming that if she speaks about it too much, others might not believe her, and then pays her off, and then gives her tea to either kill her child or possibly kill her, because later when another servant girl comes in and asks where Diana is, there's just a hug between them, and we don't know what has happened to Diana. But some great acting here by Olivia Cook, who stares at the ground, and you see that she is processing, my God, what have I become? My God, these steps that I have to take as a mother to protect my children. This is not what I wanted. At least that's what I was reading over her face, which I thought was fantastic. Alicent then comes to talk to Rhaenyra and spies the scar she put on Rhaenyra's arm. Daemon can't be bothered to get up, and Alicent is grilled by both of them about the care of her Viserys and the milk of the poppy. Rhaenyra says they keep Viserys drugged up while she and her father warm the throne, which is a hell of an accusation. Alicent says he is terrible without the milk of the poppy. He's even worse. But they also go after her for removing the Targaryen heraldry and some of the dragon erotic art that was hanging on the walls, and replacing them with statues and stars of the Order of the Seven. Hey, the Seven. We remember the Seven from Game of Thrones. Alicent defends it, saying that it guides them and reminds them of a higher authority. Rhaenyra asks whose authority will guide Alicent's hand in deciding we'll get Driftmark. She responds by saying that the Father, a symbol of the Seven, will guide her and help her forget the insults that they just lobbied at her in the room. Luke and Jace are headed back to the fighting pit where they used to train, and people are staring at them. They talk about their lineage. We see Aemon fighting Sir Criston Cole and getting the better of him, and then he says he wants to wants to see if his nephews have come back to train some more. Just then, VAEMOND comes in through the door, and we go back to the council room where VAEMOND is petitioning Alicent and Otto and presenting a compelling case. Otto saying, "Do you want a child in command of Driftmark with war on the horizon, or do you want VAEMOND in charge?" So clearly, it seems like they're in cahoots there. And then Rhaenys is at the tree. Rhaenyra and Rhaenys have an interesting conversation. Rhaenyra, in a little bit of a desperate attempt to get Rhaenys on her side, offers up her children to marry Daemon and Laena's children, and kind of cementing the access to the Iron Throne, which is something Corlys would have wanted. She says in the end, she does not take the offer, anticipates that the High Towers will knock her to her knees and she will stand alone. Rhaenyra goes to see her father, talking of the prophecy of ice and fire, Aegon's dream. She reminds him that he told her that it was their duty to unite against a common foe, but he divided the realm and she thought she wanted it. So a little questioning about whether she wants to be the queen or not. Now it seems like she doesn't want it, possibly. She begs him to defend it if she wishes her to bear the responsibility. And Viserys just starts to ramble and drifts off. But let's stop there. So a lot happening there. Shannon, I go to you first on this. They arrive. They see the changes. Certainly, Alicent is not there to greet them, possibly calling the council meeting at the same time for when they might be arriving, so she doesn't have to be there, but then goes to greet them, has the back and forth with them, both of them taking shots at each other for sure. And then later we see Alicent with VAEMOND and Otto, and then we see Rhaenys with Rhaenyra. So thoughts on what happens here at King's Landing before we get to these petitions for Driftmark?
I mean, all great stuff. I don't feel like it was Alicent who made that move. I feel like it was probably Otto who made that move, who didn't want a receiving party there for Daemon and Rhaenyra. That's, I mean,
you really want to defend her. Wow. Okay, keep going. You guys, anyway, go ahead.
Team Alicent Island.
There's a civil war brewing in the Geek Buddies right now. Greens and blacks, I can feel it. Go ahead, yeah. Go ahead.
But again, everything really, really great. When they go and see Viserys, I mean, we've watched the sort of escalation of just how pitiful he can be, and it certainly seems we've probably hit the apex, or at least we thought we hit the apex with this scene. Like his state, he kind of reminds me of Doug Jones's character from What We Do in the Shadows. Like, he is just barely holding on by a thread. And they introduce another Aegon and another Viserys, and you see him reaching out for these babies. I'm like, that must have been terrifying for those kids.
Well, they did start crying, so good point. Yeah.
Well, and this is terrible. This is a fictional world, though. The amount of mouth breathing he's doing, I'm like, all I can think is it must absolutely reek. Watching Alicent's confront Aegon because of the whole Diana situation. I think you're probably right, John. I don't think that was to take care of a potential pregnancy. I'm pretty sure it was to kill her. Because she hands her a little bit of like a little pouch of what we assume is cash. But at the same time, it's like, we're gonna make this as painless as possible. But watching just how disgusted Alicent is with her firstborn. I mean, absolutely. just seeing how he's just like, oh, it was a little bit of fun. She didn't have to go and tell everybody. He's just such a piece of shit, this dude. And then watching Jacaerys and Luecerys get back into like sort of the training grounds, and even like I get that like Jacaerys is probably a good guy. I do think he's a little bit of a dork. I mean, when he grabs the dagger, it's like, I don't think, like, again, I haven't read the book, but I don't think you're gonna be king, buddy. Like, I don't think you're long for this world. But then watching what a formidable fighter Aemond has become, and I mean, doing it with one eye, but also he's going to be on top riding, the biggest dragon in Westeros. Like, just what a threat this guy is going to be. And again, like, I'm really curious about the casting. I'm wondering if the physicality is described in the books, that again, Aegon turned out to be a little bit of a shrimp, and Aemon sort of just grew into this, very impressive physical specimen. But then watching VAEMOND get there, and I mean, you can feel that the tension is just palpable throughout the Red Keep. And then Rhaenyra sitting by her father's bedside. I mean, again, it just, your heart just goes out for the poor guy. Like, this was a responsibility he was never supposed to have, and it has literally eaten him from the inside out.
Yeah. Watching the after the episode stuff that they do after these episodes is really great. And there is this conversation that he might not have even wanted the throne, but I think Patty said it. Patty Considine said, I don't think he wanted the throne, that he was doing his duty, and seeing what doing his duty did to his entire body and ravaged him, how much effort it took for him to keep this kingdom together. It ripped him up from the inside out. So just fascinating with that. Do you want to say anything about the Rhaenys Rhaenyra back and forth there at the tree, Shannon?
Yeah. I mean, again, great scene. I mean, these two have always had a somewhat antagonistic relationship, just because of, circumstances outside their control. And you see Rhaenyra coming with a really, really good offer, but Rhaenys being like, look, tomorrow it is not going to matter. Like, they're going to put you on your knees, and I'm going to be by myself. So, like, again, just great setting of the chess pieces.
She's a shrewd politician, Rhaenys, a very shrewd, smart, knows exactly what the play is almost at every moment, and tries to come out on top almost every time. And we'll see how she plays it later on in the throne room. Mike, your thoughts?
She would have been a great queen.
Possibly. We don't know. Possibly. Michael, your thoughts on these three scenes here as we're at King's Landing and establishing everyone and their positions here for now, before we get to some stuff in the throne room.
Well, I find, when we got to like the first time jump, when we got to Rhaenyra and Alicent as adults in the first place, I mean, the entire reason that Rhaenyra didn't want to leave King's Landing has kind of come to pass. I mean, she and Daemon left, and the High Towers took over. I mean, a lot of the guards walking through the hallways are not wearing Targaryen armor. They have that like High Tower crest on their emblems, and Alicent has like decorated the whole place like a monastery, and has sort of shrouded herself in religion as her sort of shield to say, I'm more pious, I'm more correct, which is interesting. I mean, like, if you know anything about like the Game of Thrones universe, like the church and the Targaryens not always getting along perfectly, mainly because the Targaryens took lots of wives, most of whom they were related to, and all slept with each other. So, kind of not kosher to the pious. And so again, it's just one more way that Alicent has sort of built who she is in response to the Targaryen way of life, has just like kind of gone to the opposite end of things. And it's interesting because it's interesting when the queen's father is the hand. I mean, it's sort of like a stacked deck, because in other situations with a different queen and a different hand, with the king being as sick as he is, it might be the hand that is sort of ruling and ignoring the queen. But Alicent and Otto together, it's a fucking powerhouse. Like, they are running that place like nobody's business, and it is fascinating. And I did love, like, when Rhaenyra and Daemon go to see Viserys and then Alicent comes in, like, I just did love the way that Daemon didn't even get up. I mean, I love the casual nature of his, like, that, like had he been up in arms and yelling in her face, that would not have been as strong as him lounging in the chair being like, so, seat of the poppy? Really? That's what we're doing? Huh? It's just like, it is, you can see how, as powerful as Alicent has become, like, there's just this natural power that Daemon and Rhaenyra have that she struggles with. And now, especially after they've been gone for 6 years, kind of facing it head on like that. As far as her and Diana, I actually don't fully agree. I'm not defending Alicent. I know you think that I love her and think she's an innocent babe. I don't think she's an innocent babe. I don't think she is the She's not Cersei Lannister, as you seem to think she is. But I don't think that she did kill Diana. I'm like looking at what's on screen here. I think that this is actually her way of trying to convince herself she's a good person. Like Cersei and other people would have absolutely just been like, all right, you're going to talk, I'm going to kill you. She doesn't kill Diana. She pays Diana off, gives her the potion to make sure she doesn't have any bastard children, and then basically gaslights her into thinking that she's going to be absolutely destroyed if she says anything, and kind of destroys her and tells her to basically she should start fresh somewhere else. And I think probably does let her go. Still all horrible stuff. And I think convinces herself she's a good person for not killing her. That's how I read things, which is, I think what I find interesting about Alicent is not that I think she's good, but I think that she thinks that she's good.
Yes.
And
who else have we seen like that? I mean, I'm just throwing this out there.
Cersei Lannister is a straight up different thing entirely. But I do think it's really interesting. And then I think that now you made me lose my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
Meme. That fucking meme threw me off. I was like, that is a real good meme. But no, I think that
Alicent, Diana, her kid.
No, kid. Yeah. No. Okay. No. I had a really good point, and then I was just looking at Pam. Pam from The Office really took me there.
Rhaenyra. Anything there? No.
Well, no. Rhaenyra is, I think, the Rhaenyra and Rhaenys scene, I think, is also really interesting, mainly because Rhaenyra is now in a position where, to protect herself and her future, she should tell Rhaenys that Laenor's alive.
Yes.
But she actually really did love Laenor and was happy to give him his little gay pride happily ever after.
Yeah.
And didn't actually come clean on that. Like, insists that she didn't kill him and didn't have anything to do with killing him, which is technically true, but like didn't say. I mean, this is the moment. This is the moment where you're like, look, I need you on my side and I need to tell you something. And she doesn't do it, which I thought was also a really, really kind of interesting move. And then just the poor kids happily running around reminiscing about their life at King's Landing when every fucking person in that courtyard is staring at them and talking shit.
I know.
I just feel bad for them. And then, Aemond is a straight up badass. Like, Aemond is a scary psychopath. Yeah. And, was a psychopath from the moment he got off that dragon and continues to be a psychopath. He is just now a really tall and lanky psychopath. So I think that, again, just watching how they go through and kind of set up where everybody is as far as their opinions on things. And then Rhaenyra is sort of begging her dad, hey, I need you to stand up for me. And at this point in the show, I was like, well, that is really sweet, Rhaenyra, but daddy is not going to protect you anymore. Like, he can't even get out of that bed. There is no chance that this man can do anything. You are definitely 100% fully on your own. And then I was wrong.
Yeah. It's quizzical to me, Mike, when I look at it, and Shannon, when I look at this, because if Alicent and Otto are going to control this situation, allowing Rhaenyra and Daemon access to her father kind of puts them in danger. So why wouldn't you limit her access, have a guard or two there who's going to go back and report what was talked about, so you have a heads up on how to deal with them. And so I found that to be a little bit of a mistake in terms of either, if I'm looking at it, Alicent and Otto in this situation, I think they made a mistake. If I'm looking at the showrunners and the writer, I think, I'm not going to say George R. R. Martin, but the showrunners maybe here making a bit of a mistake, allowing all these scenes where she is, plying Viserys and begging Viserys to please step forward and protect her. So it just seemed odd. Or maybe Alicent is actually someone who is a good person, just is stuck with a terrible lot in life and trying her damnedest to figure this thing out, even though she's having to slowly but surely swallow some terrible decisions or some micro decisions that she would normally be against.
You coming on over to Allison Island?
No. Understanding is not accepting. There's a difference.
I think that I think there's still only. I mean, look, as the hand of the king and the queen, like, they're extremely powerful, but Rhaenyra is still the princess and next in line for the throne, and Daemon, as much as he's crazy, is still a Targaryen brother to the king. So they can be rude to them. They
Right.
can only have like, but like they can't like lock them out. They can't be like, you can't go in here. Like they're Targaryens. Like they still have, there's a level of you can't, there's some things that they probably can't do. So
Yeah.
they're doing what they can, but like Rhaenyra can go still see her dad.
Yeah.
As far as Alicent goes, I did remember the other thing I was
Okay.
going to say.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very smart. Like, you know, when Aegon was younger and just jacking off out a window, she was like, listen, kid, you got to get it together. You're going to be king one day. And now, I mean, she's just so disgusted with her son. Like, it really, they're not, again, just to use your Pam example, Cersei Lannister, Joffrey could have raped 35 women, probably did rape 35 women, and Cersei would have been like, you're my baby boy, I love you. Like Alicent is done. Like she's gonna, like Aegon is still her son, and she's still gonna protect him, and she's gonna do what she can. But she is like, you are disgusting. Like she's really struggling with. She doesn't. They're not setting her up to be the person that is like, I really and truly believe that you're gonna be a great king. Like she's very much like, I will support you. You're my son, and when shit goes down, we all know she's gonna support him, but she doesn't look thrilled about it.
No, and she says that later, right? You know, we're mothers and we protect our sons, and so clearly in her mind, she's doing what is asked of her, and this is where Alicent's her own civil war, happens constantly. Doing what she's asked of her versus what she knows to be right. Those are not always congruent, and so she has to navigate in this world in order to stay close to power. Plus, having her dad essentially being like worm tongue in her ear, trying to move her one way or another must not be an easy thing either. So, and the showrunner of the show said afterwards that this is, you know, a patriarchy. And so these women are trying to survive within the patriarchy. Yeah. And so you have to kind of judge it through that prism. Same thing with Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra can be seen through some telescopes as kind of a sniveling, person who is willing to desperately do whatever she can to retain her access to the throne, even though, as she admits in these scenes, she may not even want to be queen now. There is still something about retaining the access to the throne, the power to the throne, that she still somewhat wants to retain in order to maintain her status. She could have gone the Laenor route. Her and Daemon could have just been like, we'll relinquish it all. We're just going to sit out here. We're going to be good. Y'all be queen, king, whatever. I don't give a shit. I'm chilling out here. But she clearly still wants some access to that power. So you can see her plying her father through a different prism, more than just father-daughter stuff. Also survivalist instincts as well there. So it's an interesting thing to explore with both of them. And I think they're both doing I didn't mind the time jump now that I've had an episode to accept them. I thought they were fantastic, both actresses in this episode. For sure.
I do think one thing that I was reading, and this is a difference from the books and the show, is that because the books are told by like a unreliable third-person narrator, there's details that you don't get. Like in the books, they don't have this whole thing of Viserys talking to Rhaenyra about Aegon's prophecy and the prince that was promised. And so in the books, it really is like Rhaenyra is just holding on to being queen because she wants to be queen, and Viserys was like, I want you to be queen, and so they're just doing it to be queen. By giving the prophecy here, by having him say to her early on in the series, like, you are going to be the person, and this is why there's this prophecy, and this is really, really important to the future. It gives her a little bit of more reason for why she really feels like she should be queen. And then they use that obviously to really good effect at the end of this episode, which we'll get to eventually.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
go ahead, Shane.
Well, I was going to say also to the Hightowers not giving Rhaenyra access to Viserys. Do you think there's also a part, at least of Otto, who's just like, he's off the board. Like there's nothing else he can do, which makes his entrance later so shocking. Is like at this point, like, Rhaenyra, let her talk to him as much as she wants. He can't do anything. Like
fair point.
He's hobbled.
Yeah. And certainly the shock on his face when he comes through the door of that throne room, you can see that look on Otto's face. And when he even says, Your Grace, there's a sense of like, God damn it. There's a sense of that in that he's playing for sure. Any truth to the rumor that this could be a forebearer of Snow Miser? No, is there any truth to that rumor? I'm just throwing it out there because he kind of looks like Snow Miser. Tell me I'm wrong. Just missing the eye patch. Tell me I'm wrong. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll jump into the next section of the show and break it on down right after this.
Do 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 do.
You got to forgive me my games here. All right, let's move on to what's next here. Let's see, where are we at? We cut to the morning, and the attendants and maesters are working on Viserys. This is a heartbreaking situation to watch happen. We hear his grunts of pain, his illicit, and his just his overall demeanor of having to struggle just to function there. And when he's put in front of the fire, we hear the pains and the whelps. And if anyone who's ever had someone go through something like that, a disease or whatever, I mean, my father, when he had that lung cancer, he was only able to sit up, and the pain with which he sat up, it really brought back to mind that kind of feeling. So I hope anyone who has gone through that wasn't too affected by this in such a negative way, because I thought they did a really great job bringing that to life. He tells Otto that he wants everyone to dine together that night, and Otto asks for the milk of the poppy when he sits in front of the fire there, but Viserys turns it down. We cut to Otto sitting on the Iron Throne, the audacious son of a bitch. To hear the petitions for Driftmark, VAEMOND goes first and talks of the histories of their houses. Rhaenyra interrupts him immediately, causing Alicent to, in essence, silence her. And then he addresses her outburst. Rhaenyra begins her and then finishes up his petition by basically saying, hey, I'm next in line. I should be here. This is what should be happening, because we don't know what's going to happen with CORLYS. Then Rhaenyra begins her petition. And as she says, addressing these accusations of her children's lineage, she is interrupted by Viserys, who is announced as he walks into the room. And this is one of the greatest walks in the history of cinema or television, as he comes slowly through wearing his gold Phantom of the Opera mask, coming through everybody, and you see everybody react to him. And there's almost a sense of respect and reverence for the strength that he has, other than Otto. Everyone else seems to have this respect and reverence for him for the strength that he has coming down the aisle. And this is such a great scene. He is sent, and when he starts to climb the stairs to the Iron Throne, he refuses help from a guard. Then his crown falls off, which is very symbolic. And then and someone else comes to try to help him, and he tries to push him off initially, and then realizes it's Daemon. And the symbolism here of Daemon, who had been trying to get the throne from him, who had caused him so much grief about for him being king over Daemon. Here is Daemon now helping him up the stairs to place him on the Iron Throne there. So that scene just absolutely wrecked me, to be honest with you. And then we see Viserys speak. He speaks of the confusion he has over these petitions, and he calls out Princess Rhaenys, who would know Corlys's wishes. She actually defends Lucerys' claim and mentions the offer that Rhaenyra mentioned in the by the red tree over there. So clearly her kind of pivoting in this moment. VAEMOND is too proud after Viserys rules and says that this case is pretty much over. Lucerys will take care of Driftmark. VAEMOND is too proud to let this go, says he will not allow Viserys to rule his house. You can rule how you want your house. You're not ruling my house. And then he calls the children, with Daemon's urging, by the way, calls the children bastards and Rhaenyra a whore. Now Viserys takes out his knife and says he's going to cut his tongue off, which he was going to do no such thing. And before he can do that, Daemon decapitates VAEMOND and calmly gives up his sword when he's asked to do so. Viserys has some sort of an attack and refuses any kind of aid and says he wants to be cleared. We cut to Rhaenys watching the Maesters prepare VAEMOND's body. This is such an interesting moment. The Grand Maester, who is now essentially in charge of everything there, who we saw was helping Viserys last episode, tries to stop her from watching here respectfully, saying to her it's bad luck to look upon death. And she responds with a great line, saying that the great death has visited her so many times that he cares not if her eyes are open or closed. So let's stop here. Just talk about this section real quick, and then we'll cut to the dinner scene, because the dinner scene is so massive. Thoughts on the petition here in the Iron Throne, Mike? Everything that went down, VAEMOND's decapitation. We see Viserys walking down the hall, down the walkway there to the Iron Throne, and everything that happens around that up until Rhaenys and the body of VAEMOND.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the thing that's great, we've said this like every week talking about the show, like, oh, Viserys is like a lame duck king. He never should have been king. He doesn't really have it in him. He's just not really the leader that these other, like, Rhaenyra is a great leader in her way. Daemon's a great leader in his way. Like, everyone has these elements of leadership, and Viserys was just like, come on, dude, and even like, and all he really wanted was for his family to get along. That's all he ever wanted, and nobody was on board with it, and all he wanted was like, can't we get along? And so now here he is, body is just failing. Half his face looks like Skeletor from Masters of the Universe. Like he just doesn't. He's literally It should be comical if they weren't nailing this performance so well. Like it's ridiculous, but. This show has had, in this one season, 2 amazing entrances. There was the entrance at the wedding when Alicent came in, dressed all in green for the first time, kind of being like, look, I am team Hightower, and this is what I'm doing. And she really stepped up in a way that she had never stepped up before. And even though it's at the end of his life, this was Viserys' moment to shine. Nobody thought he had it in him. Otto didn't think he had it in him. Rhaenyra, even though she begged him to, I don't think really thought he had it in him. And when he walks into that room, everything changes. Like Rhaenyra had said, everything up to that point was a farce. We all knew what the Hightowers were going to say. They were going to give it to VAEMOND, and in giving it to VAEMOND would have called the Rhaenyra's children's lineage into question. And that would have just been a giant issue to keep them and Aegon on the throne ultimately. So that was where this was all going to go until Viserys walked in. And when he got up there after that amazing, amazing walk, which you described perfectly, and was like, I'm confused. Because this has been just like, we know, like, what's the issue here? And Rhaenys, to your point, this is why that scene with her and Rhaenyra was so great. She basically was like, I'm leaving you out to dry. The Hightowers are going to kneecap you, and that's it. Right. And she was fully going to do that. And this is why I agree with Shannon. Rhaenys would have been a great king or queen. She pivoted. Yeah. And she pivoted hard. Like, smartly so. The winds in that room changed real quick. And she stepped forward, and in saying what Rhaenyra said, made sure Rhaenyra was on the hook for it. She's like, well, yes, CORLYS did say this. You are right, King. And also, Rhaenyra had said this, and we think that's lovely. And Viserys was like, cool, job done. I can go back to my bed now. Like, it was amazing. And then, VAEMOND just, as well as Rhaenys read the room, VAEMOND did not. Yeah. Like, it was the exact opposite. And went down hard.
he won't read anything ever again after that.
And I really did love, as unnecessary as it was, Daemon just being like, say it. Daemon was like, I beg you to say this out loud. Because everybody knew, like, VAEMOND just couldn't. Viserys has said this over and over again. He did not want, he said to his wife, he has said to everybody, he was like, we are not speaking of this. And VAEMOND somehow thought he was going to get out saying that was cool. Like, there was no way. So it was just, again, like we've been saying, it was gripping. I've never seen someone walk down a hall and the walk took that long. And I was on the edge of my seat being like, oh my God. Like, it was great.
Yeah, you know what was great? As I said, watching the stuff afterwards, the actor who played VAEMOND said, if you notice, Daemon got me from behind because he knew he couldn't face me face to face, which I thought was really funny for him to say that. Because, I mean, like, that's how attached they are to their characters in such a fun and playful way. But yeah, agreed, Mike, on so many levels of everything you just said and how you described it here. Shannon, what did you think about this scene here? With the Viserys getting treated in essence and then refusing the milk of the poppy into the walk to the Iron Throne, essentially teasing the civil war that's coming by walking in between the two factions. I've got a picture that they were essentially separating them out. You see Rhaenys there kind of separating them out in a way, so you see that they're on both opposite sides and coming up the Iron Throne and then delivering his decision. And then Rhaenys, of course, with VAEMOND's body.
I mean, the effects work on Viserys was great.
Yeah.
Like you see these kind of holes in his body essentially, and you remember when the show started, who is the Maester now, who was the young black man who he was the assistant, and he had suggested some other remedies, and the former Grand Maester was like, no, we're not doing that. We're gonna use the maggots to eat the dead flesh away, and it works so well that there's now literally holes in the king.
Yeah.
And so
Maester Orwell is his name. Maester Orwell. Yeah.
Gotcha. But watching the interaction, like Otto is such a good player in the game, because when Viserys says, I want to have supper, and you imagine what Otto is thinking in his head is like, this dumb mother. It is morning, Your Grace. He's like, I know, like I meant tonight. My family's here. I want everyone to get together.
I know it's morning.
The whole petition scene, again, you can see VAEMOND is right. He's saying the right thing the wrong way, because he's just not someone you get on their side, and like it didn't help that Rhaenyra in the middle of what was probably going to be a good argument, but probably an unsuccessful argument. You have Viserys come in, and just the visual of that kind of very Richard III almost, this very affected gait to his walk. And, we talked about it before, but the thing that Game of Thrones does so well is introducing a character that you feel one way, and by the end you feel another. And when the crown falls off of his head, and you see it's Daemon who's there, which I was reading, Geeta Patel, who was the director of the episode.
Yes.
She gave an interview to EW saying that was something that wasn't supposed to happen. Like that was something they sort of discovered in rehearsals, that the crown fell off and Matt Smith grabbed it and just put it back on his head. And like he didn't break. And it was like that was a moment that they discovered, like, oh, this is a turning point in our relationship. And it was so powerful that you see, like, they have been at odds for so many years, and here at the end, Daemon, his brother, was there for him. Just such a powerful scene. And then Daemon, who we did not like at the beginning, gave us one of the best moments. Like, now we're fully Team Daemon. Sure, you married your niece, and you've done a lot of shitty stuff, but right now you're the hero. Yeah. And the moment that the top half of Vaemon's cranium hits the ground and Otto yells out, disarm him, and that sort of devil may care nature, like, no, it's okay, I'm done.
It's cool. There you go.
I mean, it was just so satisfying as an audience. Matt Smith, even though it doesn't look like he's aged a day in over 20 years, he still is turning out an incredible performance.
I love that he gets a Schwarzenegger line, and he won't be saying, his tongue he gets to keep, actually. It's a great Schwarzenegger line there.
Everybody chill.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible performance. I don't know if I can add more to what you two have said. Patty Considine just turning us all around, when making this, just finally choosing a side, finally making a decision here, stepping up here, and of course later in the dinner scene as well in this situation. And so fighting through all his physical pain to get up on that throne, to deliver his judgment. And he delivers it in such a sarcastic, confident, cocky kind of way that it's a king, maybe in his last act as king, showing how strong he is to deliver the judgment, and how strong the judgment is that he delivers there as well. So in the reaction from everybody in the throne room, and as you said, from Otto Hightower as well, we see, I think that's them there. We see them reacting to him making the decision. The whole family huddled there and seeing the reactions that Rhaenyra will actually keep her lineage to the Iron Throne, which of course dents what the Hightowers were trying to do. So that is fascinating. I wonder about the Rhaenys scene with Vaemond, because I wonder if that's about, how am I going to explain this to my husband, his brother? Because in the books, Vaemond is actually his nephew, not his brother. And the same thing happens. He sues to get control of Driftmark, and it is actually Rhaenyra who sends Daemon to decapitate VAEMOND and to be eaten by the dragon Syrax. So she's much more active in the book. And again, as Michael said, from an unreliable narrator, we see her being a much more brutal person in her pursuit of the throne. They've softened the edges on both of these characters to make them connectable, to make us kind of understand the journey they're going on.
I mean, I loved Rhaenys' line about the stranger and how much time she spent with the stranger, and the stranger is no stranger to her, and you know, everything she said about the stranger. But no, I mean, to me, it was more like, I don't think she had any particular love of VAEMOND. I don't think she was particularly sad to see him go. And I don't know that she was even thinking about what she was going to say to CORLYS. As far as she knows, CORLYS might be going the same way as VAEMOND did. I think she is just standing there. She's like last woman standing. I mean, I think she's standing there and she's like, look, as far as she knows, she's lost her 2 children. She's got her grandchildren. Yeah. She's, you know, her husband may or may not be gone. VAEMOND is gone. Yeah. And she's last woman standing. And she's, like I said, she's savvy, she's smart, she's powerful. Yeah. But I think part of the reason she's powerful is she's no shrinking violet. Like, you know, when the maester is like, oh, you shouldn't be here, this is bad, you shouldn't be facing what the stranger does. And she's like, I don't give a fuck. I am tired and I don't give a shit. That's how I took it.
DGAF, Rhaenys. No more fucks to give. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll jump into that dinner scene right after this. Bum 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 bum. That's good. Bum bum. Back half on the cue. I like it. All right, let's see here. Let's jump. Okay, we cut to a dinner with all the family around the table as the king comes in and welcomes everyone. Alicent delivers a prayer and prays for VAEMOND's soul, which elicits another giggle from DAEMON, which this time around I didn't mind the giggle as opposed to his giggle to VAEMOND's eulogy. Viserys says it is a cause for celebration over Rhaenyra's kids marrying DAEMON's children. Aegon ball busts Jacaerys about his inexperience with a woman. The king gets up to speak about the distance within his family. He has this is such a powerful moment, as powerful I think for me as he was climbing up to the Iron Throne. This moment for him to will himself up and speak to try to unite the family in a last act. His last official act as king was there in that throne room, but it feels like his last official act as a father here, as the patriarch, to try to bring these two warring sides of his family together. He gets up to speak about the distance within his family. He is happy to see their faces, but is sad to see the division within. And then he removes his mask. And I wrote here, damn, what a moment. His eye is missing. Most of his cheek on the other side of his face is missing. And he says he wants to see them as he is: king, father, brother, husband, grandsire. He seeks to try to bring them together for his sake, because the crown cannot stand in a house divided. And then he sits slowly. Rhaenyra then taking her cue, and I don't know how much authenticity is here, but you got to respect her, raising her cup, standing up and raising her cup to the queen, to Alicent, and honors her duties to him as his to Viserys as his wife, and honors her unfailing devotion, love, and honor. She says she has my gratitude and my apology. Alicent, after just a beat, also stands and says, we are both mothers and we love our children. She raises her cup to her and their house, and she even says, she concedes, you will make a fine queen. So just for a moment, and everyone drinks, and just for a moment, we glimpse the possible end of a burgeoning civil war here. I wrote, the calm before the storm. And then Aegon gets up to hit on Baela, which causes Jacaerys to arise, Luke to arise strongly. Aemon gets up.
No, that was Jacaerys.
It was Jacaerys. Sorry, Jace gets up to gets up strongly. Aemon gets up to challenge him. Jace delivers a strong toast to both of them, Aemon and Aegon, as his uncle. Aegon's wife gets up and delivers an all too truthful toast about Aegon. Of course, that's his sister Elena. She delivers an all too truthful toast about Aegon, and she has 3 children by Aegon, which we hear. And then Jace. Then we all sit down. Jace gets up and takes Aegon's wife to dance in some weird jumping dance that they're doing to the music. We see a montage of happy faces and conversation. My God, even Otto is smiling around the table as Viserys enjoys it. And slowly he starts to fade from the pain and starts to utter his howls or his just utterances of pain there. And he is carried away. And as soon as he leaves this dinner, everything starts to fall apart. Aemon has a roasted pig brought before him, which elicits a laugh from Jacaerys. He slams
Luecerys.
God damn it. Luecerys. Those are the two I can't get confused. He slams the table and delivers a toast to Luke, Jace, and Joffrey. He calls them some compliments and then says they are strong and says a toast to the strong boys, which causes a fight there between them. Rhaenyra then separates them with Daemon, sends them all to their quarters. And then there's a moment between Daemon and Aemond where it looks like it's going to go down. And Daemon is almost like, let's go, son. Bring it, son. Bring it. But Aemond, who is smart in that moment, walks off, or shall I say struts off. And Alicent calls out Aemond as well. So just like she called out Aegon after the situation with Diana, she calls out Aemond after this situation and goes to Rhaenyra. We hear that, Alicent wants Rhaenyra not to go. She wants her to stay. Rhaenyra says, it's best I should take him back to Dragonstone. But she says that she will come back on Dragon back to King's Landing to be with Alicent. So at least this seems like we've got some union back together again between these two former friends as the kids are sent back to their quarters. Then we cut to a hooded figure who goes to the woman that was with Daemon before, and she is informed of the drama at the castle. And I wrote, what the F is this all about? What's this going to play? How's this going to play out to things? Then we cut to Alicent, who goes to Viserys. He tells her again about the Song of Ice and Fire, or he talks about the Song of Ice and Fire, and that the prince that was promised will be you. Well, Viserys thinks that Alicent is actually Rhaenyra, because Alicent knows nothing about the prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire. He mentions Aegon. He says that is the one to unite the kingdom against the cold and the dark. She strokes his face, blows out the candle, says she understands her king, and we slowly cut to the dagger by his bedside. Viserys cries out in the dark, no more, and what I imagine dies in the night. Shannon, I go to you on this, starting off with that dinner scene and everything that happens in the dinner scene, and then the ending here where Viserys thinks that Alicent is Rhaenyra.
Well, also at the end, when it blacks out, he says, my love. He sees Emma.
He sees Emma, right. Great point.
Yeah, which I thought was just so... Oh,
I think
my Siri just came on. Hey,
she's probably pissed when she sees him.
Right. And by the way, Mysaria was the character who who met with the hooded figure. I apologize, y'all, that I didn't have that name at hand. Go ahead, Shannon.
Just a dynamite scene. I mean, as you said, like for the most part, there hasn't been a whole lot of action in House of the Dragon. But it's just been so compelling from episode 1. You get that great shot of Rhaenyra and Alicent with that space reserved for Viserys, and they're just not looking at each other. And then, and again, this was such a moving scene, and it was such a resounding moment. But when he takes that mask off and he's like, I want you to see me as I am. Yeah. And, he gives that great speech. In my comic brain, I just wanted someone to be like, wait, we're about to eat. Like, what are you doing?
What's wrong with you? Oh, yeah.
Oh, buddy. You couldn't wait until after dessert.
Thanks.
But such a great speech. I mean, you hear this old man pleading for people to get along. And the fact that Rhaenyra, when she expresses her gratitude to Alicent, obviously we don't know what happens in between, mainly because it's jumped around for 20 years. But I feel like this is the first time someone has said thank you to Alicent. Yeah, thank you for taking care of my father. Because Otto didn't say thank you for taking care of the king. Like he was all about the strategy of it. So she hears, thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing what I didn't because I haven't been here. And I think that really affects Alicent. And also at the same time, when she gives the return toast to Rhaenyra, I think she knows my son cannot be king. He is an absolute piece of shit. And even though this is going to cause some problems, your son is the more capable person to rule. And and Aegon never missing a moment after they talk about, the betrothal of the girls to the boys, and you know that's like, hey, so do you know how this works? Like, he's just such a fucker, and you hear Jacaerys basically say after the second insult, like, you can play the jester, but you don't talk that way in front of my betrothed. Like, he's such a good guy.
Yeah, such a normal dude.
Yeah, and you imagine that Aegon, I mean, granted, Aemon's on his side, but would Aegon be able to take Jace in a one-on-one? I'm not sure, because again, Aegon's a little bit of a shrimp.
No, I don't think Aegon could take Jace, but I think Aemon could absolutely take Jace.
100%. And then like you see that last glimpse of hope that Viserys has with the family seeming to get along. And as he leaves, and immediately, like, I mean, this is really Luke's fault. When they set that pig down in front of Aemond, and he can't help but laugh, make eye contact and laugh. It's like, oh, dude, this is kind of on you. And like, he has that great speech where it sounds like he's complimenting them, but then he adds in that one word. And when Jace, Colcocks him, I love that Aegon immediately grabs Luke, who is much younger and much smaller. Like that's what, like, Aegon, he's a bully. He's just a bad dude. But again, Alicent in that moment, she knows, like, oh, he can't do it either. My kids are not suitable for the throne. And then, that moment, like, it seemed, like, as you said, John, it seemed like they were gonna make amends. Like, these two old friends who've been at odds for over 20 years, it looked like they were gonna come together. And then because one's kid, both their kids made some bad decisions, it's never gonna happen now. And you see the confusion as Alicent is, talking to Viserys, who's, in a little bit of a fever dream, just talking about the Song of Ice and Fire
and all the medication, all that stuff. So he's out. Yeah.
Don't give vital information if you're on drugs. I think is really the lesson here. But she watched what Rhaenys did with Corlys, and now she's hearing, like, all right, Viserys is saying Aegon needs to be king.
Right.
And it, just a classic miscommunication.
Mike, thoughts on what's going on here in the dinner scene, and then what goes on later between Alicent and Viserys? Yeah,
I mean, I think Shannon and you both covered a lot of it, but I think that what's great about this whole moment with Viserys is that for the entire season, every time that he's been trying to just be like, hey, I just want everybody to get along, it's come across as weak. Particularly in the funeral scene last week, where he was just yelling at everybody, like, why can't we just put this all beside us? I need you all to get together. And I think this week was just a really interesting study in the strength in vulnerability. That he's yelled at them for years that they all need to get along, and nobody listened. But the moment that he just literally is as vulnerable as he can be, taking that mask off, showing how far he's fallen physically, and just giving this very honest and beautiful speech about what an old dying man wishes for. He's not mad, he's not yelling, he's not making demands. He just is speaking truly from his heart, and it's the most affecting thing he's done as a king in 8 episodes, which I think is really, really interesting, and it works. Like, that's the thing that makes this dinner scene so tragic, is it works. I think Shannon absolutely nailed it. Rhaenyra stands up and says, again, something that is, I don't think that calculated. I think it's honest. Like, she wasn't there for her dad as he's been failing in his health, and Alicent has been there the whole time, and she thanks her for it. And then I think Alicent isn't saying to Rhaenyra, oh, I think your son would be a better king than my son. She's saying, you're going to be a better queen. Like, it's not Aegon versus Jacaerys. Jacaerys would be king one day, but like, Rhaenyra is going to rule for a long time. Like, this is you, my friend, from childhood, would, yes, be a much better ruler than my rapist piece of shit son. So again, I think everything that's said in those moments is really honest. And even when Jake kind of gets up to dance with what's her name? Crazy Targaryen. Yeah, Helena. The jumping around is that
crazy
girl.
She's a seer, man.
you can be a seer and be crazy.
All right, fair enough.
And I think like her jumping around kind of speaks to, she is sort of like, I don't want to say like stunted, but she has like the mind of a child. Like she's not even her toast that she gives about Aegon isn't someone who is trying to be shitty to her shitty husband. Like she's actually just saying something really honest. It's funny and doesn't make Aegon feel great, but she's just sort of this innocent, childlike person in the midst of all this stuff. And so her kind of jumping around is the way that a kid would jump around, like dancing at a wedding. And Jake, because he's a good guy, is like, yeah, okay, cool, that's how we're dancing. And like Otto's laughing and everyone's happy, and you really just have, like you said, it's this calm before the storm. It's this moment where you're like, this would be great. Can we just do this? And they all lived happily ever after, and there was 1,000 dragons in Westeros forever, and everything was cool. And then it's generational trauma. That even though Alicent and Rhaenyra might be at a place where they want bygones to be bygones, their kids have listened to them for years and years and years talk shit, and it is buried deep in them, and all of the shit that they've gone through together, and everything that happened at that cave at Lana's funeral. Like, they're just, nobody was putting any of this away. And Aemond, as our new favorite villain in this series, stood up and just, you're right, like Luke did laugh at the pig. I get it. It was funny, Luke. But yes, Aemond dug the knife in to the point where it was never going to, you're never going to be able to stop this. It's a vicious cycle. And then, and I just, to your point, Alicent and Rhaenyra having that moment, even after all that, where Alicent was like, I wish you would stay. Like, it's so sad. And like, the reason, we could debate all day whether are Alicent and Rhaenyra being 100% authentic and honest? Are they being calculating? Do they really mean it? Do they not? I think what's the more interesting choice is that they do. I think what's more interesting is that there's these two people that have been friends since they were kids, and circumstance and politics and society and the patriarchy has just continually put them at odds with each other. And they've finally reached this moment where Alicent is like, look, Aegon's not going to be a great king. You're going to be a great queen. I'm cool to put this behind me. Can you just not leave? Can we just stay up all night and talk? I just feel like there's so much that we could talk about. And Rhaenyra was like, I got to get them out of here because this is some shit, but I promise I'm going to fly back on Dragon, and we're going to be best friends, and we're going to talk, and it's going to be beautiful. And it's just such a true, genuine moment, and you just want it to happen so bad. And also, had the kids not blown up, and Rhaenyra hadn't had to get them the fuck out of there, maybe she would have gone with Alicent to go check on Dad, and this whole Aegon bullshit wouldn't have happened anyway. Like, it's just like, the whole thing is horrible. And then, yes, because Alicent goes to see Viserys, and he is talking about Aegon Targaryen's prophecy, and Alicent has an Aegon Targaryen, and Rhaenyra has an Aegon Targaryen, and ultimately they are talking about Aegon Targaryen V, aka Jon Snow. There are too many fucking Aegons, and it's very confusing for everybody, including Alicent, and it's not going to go great. And it does now, in the same way that I was saying that Rhaenyra kind of wanting to be queen just because, as opposed to Rhaenyra wanting to be queen because there was this prophecy. Because I think that's what that scene is earlier, John. She's saying to Viserys, she's like, look, is this prophecy legit? Because if it's not, I would give all this up. I'm happy on Dragonstone.
Let me off of this.
I would go. Like, I could be out. Is the prophecy real? And then Alicent comes in and he's like, hey, there's this prophecy. I do think it's real. It's all about Aegon. So now you've got Rhaenyra, who probably doesn't really want to be queen at this point, but there's this prophecy. And now you've got Alicent, who's like, I don't think my son would be the best king, but there's this prophecy. So now everyone is going to go to war because they're in but there's this prophecy place, which is horrible and ridiculous and sort of just sad for everybody.
Anything to say on? And I anything to say about Mysaria? Anything to say on that, Mike?
I think she gonna be Varys, but not bald. She's not bald Varys.
Interesting.
She's like it's like I don't know where it goes, but she very very early on, when Daemon kind of saw her again after being gone for a while, was like, I don't really sell my body anymore. I make money doing something way more interesting. And they sort of implied that she was the one that probably told Otto that DAEMON and Rhaenyra were in the brothel together. There was that implication that was one of her little birds. And so now we see that she's got people in the castle, you know, just totally like synced in. So what that means for how this information of what's going down gets disseminated, as we've seen with Varys, as we've seen with Littlefinger, information is just as dangerous as swords in Westeros.
That's true. Very true. I won't reveal, but yeah, she has a part to play for sure. This is I loved this scene in the throne room. In the dinner, because there's so much happening here, and the only reason that the speech works this time, finally, I think, is because Alicent, as you guys have said, has seen how terrible her children are, which is really interesting because they come from Viserys, who's of noble stock, it seems like, and Alicent, who seems to be a good person. How do these two bastards come out of these two parents? It's kind of mind-blowing to think about how that could be possible. But then again, that's something that happens in our world sometimes. You know, if you watch the Dahmer thing, his dad has always spoken extensively about what it was like to raise this child and then discover what he did. So you just never know who is going to be the parents of a child like that. So just an interesting kind of change. Whereas DAEMON is one of the worst people in the entire universe, House of the Dragon. But here he's essentially been raising these children for a few years now, and they've turned out to be pretty noble people as well with Rhaenyra. So it's just very interesting to see the differences as well. So I think this time it works because Rhaenyra is kind of desperate to find some sort of peace here, and Alicent is desperate to find some sort of peace because of the madness of her children, and they just want to kind of finally figure this out. Plus, I imagine Alicent has not had one friend other than Sir Bitterman, Kristen Cole, there with her the whole time. So having a female friend, I'm just saying, having a female friend hang out with her, I think, and reuniting that and rekindling that would be so important to her. Do you know what I'm saying? And she's the queen. And she can have that. And she can push Otto down a peg to be like, no, I'm going to have this. We're going to do it this way. And that's the true tragedy of it all. And of course, at the end, Mike, as you say, it's Viserys. Ironically, it's Viserys who tries to unite them that actually separates them because of the prophecy that he had spoken to Rhaenyra way back when he made her heir in the first episode. And then speaking about the prophecy again here while he's still alive. And then right here at the end, speaking of the prophecy to Alicent in a confused state. And just to give you a little connection to the books, Alicent is older in the books. So the stuff that she is doing with Viserys, she actually did with the previous king, Jaehaerys. She had that. And she was eventually mistaken for one of Jaehaerys' daughters. So they've essentially transposed that onto this relationship. And I think it really works for what you see. And there was the precedent last episode because he called her Aemma on accident when he was walking there or in a confused state. So certainly it was happening. So no surprise. And that adds even more to the tragedy that they're going to go to war because each of them thinks that they're honoring their father or their husband's wishes. And that's the sad truth of the tragedy that we're going to see if you've seen the preview for episode 9 for sure. Any final words to say as we wrap up here for episode 8? I'll go back to you, Mike. Any final words on this episode as we glimpse episode 9 on the horizon?
If you are a gay musical theater fan, there is a moment in Wicked during Defying Gravity where when Elphaba is like bugging out from Oz and she's about to leave and she's like, Glinda, like, come with me, we could do this together. And there's like the brief moment where they sing together where you're like, oh fuck, man, Glinda and Elphaba running around, two like badass witches, like they would fucking rule Oz. Like the wizard wouldn't have a chance. This would be awesome. And then Glinda backs off and she doesn't do it. And she's like, hey, I hope you're happy. And they part their ways. And to me, this entire episode was all like leading up to the moment where Alicent was like, why don't you stay? And Rhaenyra was like, I'll come right back on my dragon. It was like, there's just this moment where you're like, man, Rhaenyra Targaryen and Alicent Hightower together ruling things would be a fucking powerhouse. Like Rhaenyra taking the throne, Alicent could become her hand. Like you could just, this could be some shit. And then you just know it's not going to happen. And it's because of the patriarchy, and it's because of Westeros, and it's because of Otto Hightower, and it's because of all these things. And it's just a bummer, but it's a bummer in all the best ways. And I can't wait to see what happens.
And tragically because of Viserys, tragically, who tried to unite them. It's such a shame. Shannon, final words on episode 8 as we move away from Lord of the Tides.
I mean, I'll be curious how much time passes with 9 and 10, but you know, I'm curious if we'll get to see Aemond and Daemon have it out this season, because it sure seems like those two are going to have a little jousting match, have a little tete-a-tete.
Yes. So yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward
so
to
John knows
happens,
something. Okay.
If that happens as well. But there's so much more. As Michael said earlier, there's so much more of the story to tell. There's so much more to come here for sure. So just enjoy this, relish this, cherish this, that we're getting such a fantastic season of a Game of Thrones universe show yet again. It is completely washed away for me, season 8 of Game of Thrones, to the point where I almost went back and started watching some of my favorite episodes of Game of Thrones, and I have not had the inclination to do that since the end of season 8. And so I credit the show for doing that for me, because I just love the writing here, love the direction, love the performances, and love the way that they've made some adjustments from the books that make you care about these characters, be invested in these characters, and as Michael said, glimpse and really feel the tragedy of what is going to happen, because there was a moment, it just is now shattered on the rocks there at King's Landing, unfortunately. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. And a good point you bring up, Shannon. Will we be already knee deep in the Civil War? Will this be the beginning of the Civil War? Where are we going to go in episode 9? Because episode 9 is usually the big episode in every season of Game of Thrones. So I wonder if we're going to get something massive in this episode, and 10 being somewhat of a denouement for the first season of House of the Dragon. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us here for this spoiler review of House of the Dragon episode 8 here. So much fun talking about all this with these two gentlemen, 11 pieces. Shannon, what do we got to say?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's @geek_buddies, on Instagram at _geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's @Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is @MKToon. If you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is @The Rocha Says.
Mikey?
Like Johnny said, we love what we do. We love chatting with each other, and we love you all being here with us, as long as your name is not Aegon. So if you're not Aegon, then here's what you can do for us. You can hit that like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page, and check out all the amazing content that he's got right there. Leave your comments below. What did you think of this episode? What did we miss? What did we not miss? What do you like? What do you hate? Where do you think it's going? Let us know below. If you are listening to us via podcast, go ahead and take a minute to leave us some stars, leave us some comments, helps us go up in the rankings so more people can find us. And as always, the best thing that you can do is retweet this video, post it to your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
There you go. All right, y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. And we'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review for House of the Dragon. Oh, wait. And big thanks to carbonhealth.com as well, who powers and sponsors us here on the Geek Buddies. Go to carbonhealth.com right now. Download the app as well. If you have any healthcare questions, concerns, or needs on the go, or if you need to see somebody soon, go and take a look at them, see if they've got a clinic near you. They also offer virtual care, so you can do that online to get checked out if it's more of an emergency for sure. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review here from the
Geek
Buddies!
Hey!